year. And speaking of armed services, congratulations to Steve Greiner, this year's recipient of the Patriot Award, which is given each year to somebody who gives back to the game of golf, but also to his country as well. Here are Steve's thoughts about being the recipient of the 2016 award.
No greater honor when you're working with people who have served our country and are willing to go to combat, and they get injured, they get ill, all the things that they go through, not to mention the mental trauma that they go through. For me to help them using the game that I love, using golf, if I can help them bring their family back together, possibly help in their long-term physical therapy, whatever it is, there's just no greater feeling, and for me, no greater honor. My hope is that while it's nice to receive the Patriot Award and all that goes with it, what I really hope is it leads toward me and my team being able to provide our program to more and more veterans and wounded warriors.
Well, Steve, congratulations, very well earned, and that was all part of the PGA of America's annual meeting. This is their centennial, their 100th, and the man who's been up there who also served this nation proudly as a Marine joins us now, and that is our insider, senior writer at golfchannel.com, Rex Hoggard. Rex, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Gary. How are you?
I know that this is a special day for you. I know it's a proud day for you, and we'll get to that. But let's start with the business at hand. This is the transition of power for the PGA of America officially with respect to Derek Sprague ending his 2 one-year terms and Paul Levy assuming the responsibility of the president. What are some of the top things on the agenda, including their biggest event? You could argue they have the Ryder Cup, but they have the PGA Championship. That is being discussed, is it not?
Well, yeah, there's some scheduling issues. I've been here 2 days now, and there's been a lot of talk. I mean, it's the normal things you would expect. I mean, specifically, they talk about growing the game. That's always one of the main missions for the PGA of America. And the other half of this is they talk about more opportunities for their membership. They have 28,000 members that they're trying to look after. But certainly the Ryder Cup and the PGA Championship were a big part of the conversation yesterday in the general meeting. And it was interesting to hear some of the officers, not just Derek Sprague, the outgoing president, but also Pete Bavacqua, talk about the success of the Ryder Cup, the long-term success of the Ryder Cup that the task force and now the committee have created, and how they feel like they have a lot of momentum on their side. But specifically to that schedule that you asked about, there were some issues scheduling-wise this year with the Olympics. I think most people will tell you that, look, it was a success going to Rio and the Games, but there were some scheduling issues, and probably the PGA took the brunt of those issues, having to move their championships 2 weeks earlier into July. And Pete told me yesterday that, look, this needs to be a team effort looking ahead to 2020 when golf is back in the Olympics in Tokyo. This needs to be something that's addressed by all the parties involved, including the PGA Tour, European Tour, the R&A, the USGA. They can't expect the PGA Championship to bounce around. And there was one interesting moment during my interview with Pete where I asked him specifically, in 2020, would you be open to moving the PGA Championship to May, to earlier in the season? He said, absolutely, that's on the table. And I think that could create some scheduling changes going ahead that actually could become permanent. So there's a lot of changes going on as far as scheduling are concerned.
It's very interesting. It would be the month of May, and that's Harding Park. And so from a climate standpoint, it's certainly very plausible to do that. I also heard some of the quotes he gave you talking about, you know, there has to be cooperation. They can't do this alone. The USGA and the R&A have got to be willing to make some changes as well. It's a fascinating story. It'll be interesting to follow. Now, the election of these officers, the presumptive ascension from one position to the next, the secretary is the one we don't know. We assume Susie Whaley will become the vice president. Mentioned Paul Levy becoming the president. What are you hearing?
Well, you have 3 candidates for secretary, and as you pointed out, it is in the session plan. The way it works out is secretary moves up to vice president, and then to president. It will be interesting. Susie Whaley became the first female officer for the PGA of America 2 years ago when she was elected to secretary. She seems to be moving on to vice president, but now you have this election for secretary. You have 3 candidates: Jim Richardson from Wisconsin, Rick Murphy from North Carolina, and Russ Libby from Florida. Russ Libby is interesting. He is the only one of the 3 who ran for the position 2 years ago against Susie Whaley. He's been on top of a very aggressive campaign so far this week. They vote this afternoon. We'll know for sure, but it really maps out basically the next 6 years for this organization.
Let me end with this. I mentioned, for those folks who don't know, and many viewers certainly do know, that you serve this country, the ties of golf in the military. What does it mean to you?
Well, you just did that great story that the Patriot Award was handed to Steve, and I had a chance to talk with a couple of PGA pros this week, and what an unbelievable job he's doing up at Fort Belvoir. And I think that's an indication of what golf can do for the military, specifically wounded warriors and disabled veterans who come home and they need a place to go to restart their lives. I think I look back to my days in the U.S. Marine Corps, and it was great today, obviously being Veterans Day, but for me personally, yesterday was the Marine Corps birthday, and I had a chance to talk to a lot of the guys I served with in the Marines, and we brought up a lot of old stories about playing golf at Paris Island Golf Course and sneaking up to Virginia to play at Andrews Air Force Base, which has a very good golf course. There's such a close tie between all of us and playing golf and just trying to do whatever we could to get away from duty for a little while. And it's a very close connection.
Well, it's an important day, and certainly we always say this to you on a day like today. We're proud of you, and thanks for your service. Travel safe. See you next week up on Sea Island.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Okay, there's Rex Hoggard, the insider, senior writer, golfchannel.com. When we